I was so excited. And when they opened the door in the morning, oh my God, they were so upset. And I was so embarrassed. I just looked at them and I thought, oh, I've made such a mistake here. We wrapped the piece in the moving blanket. It looked like a dead body. And the police came because they had heard we were carrying this dead body in the thing. And they stopped us on the way up there with the sirens. And they said, what are you carrying? I said, oh, sculpture. I'd been applying for them for 10 year before I got my first one.
Wow.
10 years. Ooh, it failed miserably. I had to scrape it all off the floor. Oh, God, it was a mess. I made a mess. And I said, I am so sorry. And he looked at me and he said, bless you for even at your age still being experimental.
Welcome to the Installation Art Podcast, the world's #1 podcast about installation art and the people who work with it. In each episode, you will hear about the joys and challenges of the medium and get an exclusive behind-the-scenes look at the career and process of internationally renowned guests. I am your host, Anastasia Parmson. And today I am beyond excited to bring you an interview with one of the most celebrated and influential American sculptors working today, Petah Coyne. Known for her gracefully intricate sculptures and installations, Petah's work transforms everyday materials into evocative multi-layered stories. From using silk flowers to taxidermy, wax, and black sand, her pieces have earned a place in the world's most prestigious museum collections, including MoMA, the Guggenheim, and the Whitney. Petah has been incredibly busy with multiple exhibitions in the works at once, so this conversation was a long time coming. I am so glad we finally had a chance to talk. Petah is such a wonderful storyteller, and I think you will really enjoy this episode. It's a genuine honor to introduce this iconic artist on the show. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Petah Coyne. Let's start with some quick, easy questions. First thing that comes to mind, just to get us warmed up. How about that?
Okay, shoot.
Do you have a favorite quote?
Oh, a favorite quote would be, know thyself. Mostly because that's Socrates, I think. Just, really know thyself. I think they always said it was because it would be like know your limitations and things of that nature. But when I think of know thyself, know your heart, know your soul. And if you have to know your limitations, then you can break out of those limitations. Like, okay, you're a woman sculptor, that's more difficult. Okay, let's see if we can break free of those chains and go further, get a whole bunch of women together. Let's be wild and let's push it beyond the boundaries, So know thyself to me is really fantastic.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how weird are you? 10
depends
being
what day it is. How weird am I? Oh gosh, that's an awful question to ask somebody.
You can say that you're not weird.
I don't think anybody thinks they're weird, but maybe I am weird. Maybe
I think I'm weird.
You think you're weird?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I suppose hanging 5,000 dead fish in your living space, that's pretty weird. But I never thought of it as being weird. I thought it was perfectly normal. So I don't know. Do you think that's weird?
A little bit.
Well, and then moving it to somebody else's yard and not asking their permission. And I thought they'd think it was beautiful, but they didn't. And that
they
was
weren't happy with dead
They
fish.
were not happy. They were not. And it looked so beautiful. It was in their
I bet.
trees and across their lawn and over their cars, and, it was so beautiful, and I thought I had given them the most gorgeous gift, like a tsunami had hit their home and nobody else's home, just their home. Like, wouldn't you love to wake up in the morning, open your door, and see a tsunami come through your trees and your flower boxes and over your line where you hang your laundry, have all the fish hanging there? I mean, wouldn't that be beautiful? Wouldn't that be a lovely surprise?
Did you do that overnight in their yard?
Yes. Yes, with 5 of my friends, very quietly at 2 in the morning at a place on Long Island called Garden City. And I did it because my husband was getting eye infections, and the doctor told us that if it was true that we had 4 to 5,000 dead fish hanging in our loft, that my husband would eventually go blind. So
Oh,
I thought, let's hang them in somebody's yard. That would be so beautiful. So we took about 500, 600, and we hung them in their yard. And I thought it was beautiful. I stayed across the street, thought we would have breakfast together and talk about esoteric things. And I was so excited. And when they opened the door in the morning, oh my God, they were so upset. Anastasia, and I was so embarrassed. I just looked at them and I thought, oh, I've made such a mistake here. And I just walked down the street like I had nothing to do with it. Like, I don't know who did that, And I walked,
doo-doo-doo.
yeah, see you later.
So,
And
have you given up your dead fish collecting habit now?
yes, that was a long time ago. That was in the
Okay.
late 70s, early 80s. I have a
Okay.
few left, but that's it.
What is your favorite beverage to have in the studio?
Sparkling water.
Just plain sparkling water or flavored?
I like lemon,
Okay, nice.
lemon flavored. What about you?
Yeah, I love sparkling water, especially
See,
in the summer, which
it's
it
my
is
first.
summer here right now.
I can't believe that. You are so lucky. It's nice here today, but it's been cold. It's been cold. So
It
maybe
makes
I'll
for a
join you.
weird Christmas, though.
Yes, it does, I bet. I bet it does. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's get into it and talk about your career. Tell me about how it all started. Briefly, what was it like growing up, and how did you come to discover art as a kid or whenever you did?
Well, I don't know if you know my background at all, but
Yes,
I
I've been
was
listening to all your interviews with the jealous curator.
oh, she's so sweet, isn't she? She's adorable.
Yes.
She's so nice. Yes, my father was military. So, as most artists that are military, you travel all the time. And we moved 15 times before I was even 12, just constantly, every 6 months, move, move, move. But my parents made it so fun for us. We didn't move into military bases, we moved into wherever it was. In Germany, we moved into the German neighborhoods, or in Hawaii, which was my favorite place, we moved into the Japanese neighborhoods. And although we moved 4 times, we lived with the Japanese, and I loved it so much because they made you feel welcome there. And I always knew I was an artist. My brother was an artist, and my sister, I think, would have become an artist if she hadn't felt overwhelmed by my brother and I. And my mother studied Ikebana and was the first Caucasian Ikebana master, probably because we lived there. And my parents, they would take us out of school for anything, absolutely anything that was going on anywhere. And that was lovely. That was lovely. They took us out of school for the spaceship, when it was going off. They took us out of school to go down there and see that. My father wanted us to see the bottom of the ocean, so he would take us out and take us on submarines, and we would go down to the bottom of the ocean and see that and see how wonderful it was down there. And then when there was a volcano erupting, we would get in helicopters and go above the volcano erupting and to see that.
Wow.
And then we would go down to the earth and feel the heat of the volcano and how hot it was, and it burned your body. And then on your backside, it was freezing because of the temperature. It was like stormy outside. So then you had to turn around to make your front cold and the backside hot. You had to keep turning it. I remember thinking this was so much fun until we went to this little town that had the volcano running down the hill, and it covered their homes and took their homes out. And I just felt so devastated for them. So all this stuff was such visual information for us. And we would always draw what we saw and then make stories that night about whatever it was we saw. And then my mother would read to us, but always not children's books. Although she did read those, she would always read us Dickens or whatever. She didn't see a difference between adult books and children's books. She would read to us everything. And although I'm sure we didn't understand most of it, she wanted us to have the vocabulary and listen to the stories. And then she would quiz us about them. So,
wow. Very creative upbringing in a way, culturally diverse.
Yeah, it was very interesting. Yeah.
So how did you then figure out that you wanted to do art or study art or be an artist?
Well, my mother would line us all up when she was, because she wanted to focus on what she wanted to focus on. So when she was doing Ikebana, she would send us out to get materials. We would all go out and she'd say, now I want you to find something amazing. And it can't be just normal. It has to be amazing. It can be something like a pine cone, but it has to be the most incredible pine cone you've ever seen. And so we would search all day. And she said, I'm only going to choose one thing. So it wasn't like we could gather up like hundreds of things and we would be in competition with the other two, So we'd be looking for shells or pine cones or sticks, and they had to be like interesting. So this was like visual things we were doing. And then we would bring each one of us one thing at the end of the day. And that's pretty incredible for children that were 3 to 8 years old, to have them focus that long. And then she would choose one thing. And we didn't ever feel like, oh, Tom got the bet, he always wins, because then she would tell us why she chose it. And then she would put the arrangement together, and then she would say, now, what do you think? And we'd be all like, oh, and we'd raise our hands. She goes, no, not so easy. And then she would turn it around just a little bit. She goes, look how it changed. And we'd all be like, oh my gosh, and then she would keep turning it around. I mean, obviously I would become a sculptor, turning that around because it would change so much. And my brother became a filmmaker because of the turning. It was like a film to him. And my sister, she would have been a great photographer. The stuff she was doing in college, wrapping her friends in plastic, that shrink wrap on the beach. Like the photographs were so weird. And yet she just thought, oh no, it's not that good. And I'm like, Beezy, this stuff is so strange, But she didn't have the confidence, which was such a shame. So anyway, and I never wanted to go to school. I only wanted to do art. And so my parents said, okay, if you can figure out, when I was in high school, if you can figure out how you don't have to go to school, we'll stand behind you. So I went to the principal and said, I don't want to go to this school. I'll run away unless you let me go to like college or do art. I don't want to do this. And he goes, okay, if you test out of the classes, you don't have to go. I said, great. So then all summer I would study. And then I would take the test. And if I passed them, then I could go to the university and do all the life drawing classes and the clay classes. And I was casting bronze, when I was a
Amazing.
sophomore in high school. So it was really great. It was really
Yeah.
great.
And did you ever have some kind of an aha moment where you're like, this is what I want to do?
I really wanted to be a painter. I
Mm-hmm.
really wanted to be a painter, but I did not have the touch. And I tried so hard. I tried so hard to be a painter. I just didn't have it. I had the emotion, but I didn't have the facility. And all my teachers kept saying, "You're a sculptor, you're a sculptor." And I was like, "I don't want to be a sculptor because it's so hard." It was really hard. And they said, "Well, you don't think it's going to be easy, do you?" And I was like, "Oh." And so I pushed ahead with the sculpture, and then I got into college, and all my college sculpture professors to me just were so sexist and so prejudicial. And I just was like, "Oh, this is awful. I'm not a painter. They're doing stone carving or they're sexist." They really were horrible. So now what do I do? So then I thought, well, just to get through school, I'll do photography and printmaking and I'll double major. And then as soon as I'm finished, I'll go back into sculpture. So that's what I did.
Right. So how did you end up in New York and doing sculpture again?
Well, I have to give a lot of credit to my older brother. We were very close. He went to John Herron Art School, and I went to the Art Academy of Cincinnati. And when he was finished, he went on to Columbia Graduate School, and he double majored in filmmaking and painting. And he did have the touch. And he was in New York. And as soon as I finished graduating, I got married to my childhood sweetheart. And I had a show in Dayton, and then I had another show in Dayton. And I remember going into the show in Dayton, and they didn't know who I was because it was downtown. And I remember people laughing at it and saying, "Oh, this stuff is terrible."
Mm.
And I remember thinking, I'm not even really pushing myself here. And if they think this is terrible, the ideas that I have in my head, it's never going to go. This place is too provincial for me. I have to get out of here. And then I went to a lecture and heard Jody Pinto, Alice Aycock, and the third one. I can see her face. Oh, I hate that I can't remember her name. I should have written it down.
Donna something, wasn't it?
Donna Dennis.
Yeah, I love her work.
Thank you so much. She is so good. They came to Dayton to do the Dayton Beautiful Council, and they were talking about stuff I never heard of before. And I was like, okay, this is it. I got to go to New York. So I went home and told my husband, and he goes, "Well, okay, we can go." And I said, "I mean, this week. I would like to go this week." And he's like, "I'm in graduate school." And I'm like, "Well, you can stay and finish, and I'll go and I'll find a place for us to live and you can join me when you finish. Because you're not going to leave me here." He said, "We just got married." I go, "I know." And we'd waited 8 or 10 years to get married. And I said, "Just come when you're finished." He goes, "No, I'm leaving with you. I can get some of the money back." And we had like 5 cars because everybody kept leaving Dayton, leaving their cars with us. And I remember we had to we just put for sale signs on them. And we just sold them all in like 3 or 4 days, whatever anybody would pay for. We just would take the money. And we went to New York. And I remember I didn't even tell my brother we were coming. We just showed up and he was like, "Well, what are you doing here?" Because he lived in Tribeca, and that was way before Tribeca was like, it was dark. There were no stores there. It was like, this was in the 70s, Soho was barely Soho, right? And Tribeca was nothing. You could be murdered in Tribeca. Nobody would find you till the next day. It was so black. It was so dark. It was just horrible. And he had 5,000 square feet for like $200. It was so cheap. You would walk up the stairs, and as you're walking up, there were some stairs that were missing, but it was pitch black in the stairwell. So you had to kind of feel each step to make sure the step was there. It was really funny. And in the basement and the first floor is where all the hot dog vendors keep their vending machines. So you can imagine the rat patrol that was there. But we were on the top floor. So by the time they got up to the fourth floor, I think they were exhausted. So we didn't have too many on our floor. It was pretty horrible, but we didn't stay there too long, 6 weeks. And my brother I've never given him full credit. I'm not sure I would have had the nerve to come to New York. It was the unknowable, right? It was scary, I think, just to show up here. But it was a wonderful place. It was broke at the time, He said, we have to find a place that's got a C of O, because you won't lose a place. He kept losing his places because they would throw you out. So
Right.
we found he was dating a girl, Susan Lebowski at the time, and she was in a loft in Soho that had a washing machine. Now, this was unheard of, and this was so cool. So they were going to open up the fifth floor, and I was like, oh God, we've got to see if we can get in there. So I went to the landlord and I introduced myself. She was a countess from Italy. And I told her, how I'd been to Italy and how much I loved it. And I talked about all these things. And I brought her some croissants and coffee that morning when I was talking to her. And she said, I think there will be room for you. We'll get you a place on the fifth floor. And I was like, oh, thank you. Thank you. She said, you should not be out running around. She said, you're going to be killed in this environment here. So she got us this place, but it didn't have anything. It had a toilet. That's all it had. So it didn't have the heat. It didn't have anything. And my brother moved in with my husband and I, and you had to build everything, you had to bring the risers up for the heat. And it was, it was
Big project.
raw. Big project. Took us a year.
And were you working on any art at the time when that was all going on?
Oh, sure. You had to be really organized because I was working 5 days a week. You had to look at art. You had to do your art. You had to build your loft. So you had to be incredibly organized.
Yeah.
And my husband was looking for a job. My brother was on unemployment because he was working in a restaurant and it closed. He was so lucky. So he was on unemployment for 6 months. And he taught us how to build the loft. So it was, thank goodness you have a lot of energy when you're young, right?
Yeah. You actually waited quite a long time before putting your work out into the world. Can you talk about that? Like, what were you working on and how did you know when you were finally ready?
Well, I was lucky that the lady that my brother was dating, Susan Lebowski, was a curator. And she came up and she looked at my work and she said to me painfully that my work was not good enough at all for New York, that I needed to really, really work and don't waste my time taking it out. Just don't. Work on your work, go out and look at art. She said, because there's a lot of people that are doing kind of what you're doing much better than what you're doing. And
Wow,
and
harsh criticism.
it was, but good, right? I think I cried after she left, but it's good. It's good because it saved me a lot of time. And it also made me go out every Saturday from 10 till 6 and look at art and memorize the galleries and know the names. And every Saturday, Soho, Uptown, and then the 2 other Saturdays, museums, and then start again. And it was good. You learn all that. And it took me about 3 or 4 years to really get to know the scene and stuff. I was very shy, so I didn't really know anybody. I was building the loft. It was hard. But I was fine with it. 2 nights a week, I stayed up all night and worked on my art. And I just would pretend half of me would go to bed and half of me would stay up. I convinced myself of this. And, thank goodness I had a lot of energy.
Yeah. I used to pull all-nighters as well, and I'm like, "How did I do that?"
I know, right? How did we do that? It's really something in the 20s and 30s. I can do it once in a while now, but it really does affect you, doesn't it? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, no, it's too hard now.
yeah. That's good when we were young.
So what compelled you to start making large-scale work and installation type work?
Well, that's I was thinking because I listened to a lot of your other interviews and I had to really think. I thought it started with the Sculpture Center. But in thinking back, I have to say, I used to make, when we finally settled down in Dayton, Ohio, I was in junior high, and I used to make installations there in trees, which is interesting because I'm still doing trees. And I would take my mother's fine china and I would hang them from the trees, and I would hang all her silver from the trees, and I would hang all this gorgeous linen that she had from Ireland that was all hand done by my old relatives, my great-great-grandmothers and stuff, and I would hang them over different trees, and we had these beautiful fir Christmas trees. They were blue Christmas tree things that were huge. They were 24 feet, and they were in the side yard, and I would hang all these things, and they would blow in the wind just like the fish, I guess, and they were so beautiful. And my mother said, "All right, you can do this, but before your father comes home, you have all that down." And I'd be like, "Okay, I can do." And I would have all these, and the cups would blow and the saucers would blow. They were so beautiful. And I remember some of the neighbors would drive by and they'd look, that child is so strange. And I just thought they were so beautiful. And so I think those were my earliest installations. I didn't think of them as installations. They were just to me sculptures. And then later all the fish, I think, in people's yards
Mhm.
and what have you. But then Judy Pfaff really started the installations. She was the one that started that at Holly Solomon's, and Jessica really started that too. Jessica Stockholder? Stockholder. Yes, Jessica Stockholder. But when I started to do Sculpture Center, Marion Griffiths, who was the director there, said that I must do an installation. She didn't want to see any plop art. And I was like, plop art? Oh, goodness. And she said, so
What's
you have
plop art?
plop art is kind of like, how all those people do sculptures and they just plop it down?
Yeah,
So,
okay.
and a lot of it that is done outside in public art. A lot of that is
Yeah.
plop. It's just plop down. I always
Mhm.
love the name plop art. And
I love that name. I'll steal it.
yeah, yes. And she said, you can't do any plop art here. It has to be an installation. And I said, Judy does that, and she does it so incredibly well. How can I do that? And she said, I want you to come up here every week for an hour and just be in the space, sit in the space, walk around the space, get to know this space really well. And I'm like, oh dear. And I felt like it was penance. She was so Catholic. I was so Catholic. So I did it. And it was about a month in that I started to understand what she was talking about. And so I said, okay, all right. And she said, I'm going to give you 6 weeks. You're allowed to build in this space.
Wow,
And
that's
that,
a long time.
so yeah, that was a long time, wasn't it? It was July and August. And I thought, gosh, what a gift. And so I said, okay, done. So I started to build, and I would go out in a rented truck and I would just gather material. I was doing a lot of the wood pieces and stuff, the tree stumps and trees and things. And she said, you're going to need an assistant, hire an assistant. And I was like, well, what do I do with an assistant? And now I have to have so many of them. But she said, just get an assistant. And so the assistant came. She was a student from one of the universities. And so she said, well, what would you like me to do? And I'm like, well, we're going to make art. Just make art. She's like, okay. And she had worked for Heidi Fosnack, who was, she knew what exactly she wanted to do and how to cut the things. She goes, well, what would you like me to do? And I said, well, just, start putting things together. And she's like looking at me like, boy, you've never had an assistant before. And I said, just dig into one of the stumps so I can put something in it. And she goes, oh, okay. Do you have a chisel? And I said, no. I said, but I have a screwdriver. So I give her the screwdriver and hammer. And she's like, so at the end of the day, she said, can I go to Canal Street and buy some tools? And I said, well, I don't have much of a budget. She said, I will buy them. And she said,
Wow.
and she was a huge girl. So I had hired her one day a week and she started working for me, and she worked for me every day for, I guess, a year or so. She was wonderful, just wonderful. Claudia Pera, she was great, just great. A wonderful sculptor in her own right. So that was, and so we did this whole installation there, and I put hay all over the floor so you could smell it a block away. And we hung hay balls in the trees outside. So when you got off the subway, you could smell a barnyard coming up and down the street. Well, the fire department came and they said, oh my God, this is like a fire trap. What are you doing here? And this was the day before the opening. And I was like, oh gosh. And Marion, who could charm anybody, she was in her late 70s. She said, oh, this poor little thing's been working on this so hard. You can't close us down. He goes, oh, yes, I can. You know, somebody just smoking a cigarette outside, a little ash. This whole place is going up. And Marion said, well, how about if we just sweep the floors? And he's like, well, all right, do that. So that's what we did. We swept the floors, put it downstairs, just the hay. And that night, the water heater broke for the whole building, which was quite a tall building. And the hay festered. So now you could smell it for 20 blocks, and it smelled wonderful. So everybody was trying to find out, where's this lovely smell coming from, you know? And it was just so nice. And we had the opening, but the opening, everybody was sweating just like pigs because all the humidity was rising from down below. They're going, how'd you get this swamp environment? Because it looked like a swamp. And I'm going, well, you know, I had a little help from maybe the people up there. But it was, you know, things like that always help your environments, right? So
I love that people thought it was part of the work.
Yes, it was. New York Times
a good
did a
crowd.
great review. Yeah, we got more reviews on that. We got so many reviews, like New Yorker, New York Times, Village Voice. It was my first big show, and we got tons of reviews. I think mostly because it smelled so lovely. You know?
So how did that opportunity actually come about for you? You knew the gallerist.
Well, when I had the fish hanging, someone told me that you send slides around. I knew nothing. The school I went to did not prepare you for anything. So I really, honest to goodness, didn't know anything. And I was working in advertising, and there were some artists there, and they told me that you send slides around. And so they had a duplicating thing. So I took my slides, I duplicated them 250 times, and I sent out 250 sets to like everybody.
Holy cow.
High and low. I sent them to Castelli. I sent them to everybody, right? Leo Castelli came. He wanted to see these dead fish. He couldn't believe it, but he was right around the corner, so no big deal. But this one guy from 57th Street called me, and he said, do you really have 5,000 dead fish down there? And I said, yes. And he said, well, now I'm telling you right now, I will not show you. I'm not interested in showing you at all, but I would like to come and see it. And I said, well, sure, come on down, you know? So he came down, and he wouldn't take his coat off, right? Wouldn't take his coat off, wouldn't have a cup of tea, nothing. He stood the whole time. He kept walking around. And I said, do you have anything you'd like to say or any suggestions? And he looked at me straight in the eye, said, okay. He said, do you have any collectors? And I said, oh, no one's bought anything yet. I've just started. He goes, well, that's what I figured. He said, has anyone written about this? I said, no. I haven't had any shows or anything yet. That's why I sent out the slides. And he goes, I figured that too. And he said, okay, this is what I'm going to suggest. You shouldn't be sending your things to all the galleries because you have nothing to trade. I said, trade? He goes, you don't have any collectors. You have no articles, no anything. He said, you don't have any sales. You have dead fish here, he said. So what you should do, in my opinion, is you should start sending your work to alternative spaces. I'd never heard of them before. I'd only been to spaces that I'd read in the gallery guide, right? And he said, send it to them and then send it to all the university galleries that are in this area, and then go out about one state around us. Do that. And he said, anybody who's at all interested, try to go pick them up and bring them back, even if you have to rent a car. He said, because if they're willing to come to look at the stuff, make it easy on them. And he said, that would be my advice to you. And I was so thrilled that somebody would give me advice. I mean, I didn't know what to do. I thanked him profusely. And I was so pleased, thank you so much. Nobody else had given me any kind of direction to go, right? So great.
So that's what you did?
That's what I did. And I'd waited so long, and so that's what I did. And then people started coming, mostly to see. And as I was doing that, my work was evolving and changing. And I started to go down to the swamps and bring things back. And I started to work with terminally ill patients, and work was changing and evolving. And then I started to get shows and exhibitions. And that's then how Sculpture Center heard about me, because I was doing, and I started to get the press really started to follow me because I was sending it then to writers and things of that nature. Also, we had groups, where we would meet and have potluck dinners, and I started to get politically involved. And then I heard about this Marion Griffiths, who was doing very cutting edge work, and her shows always got reviewed. So I asked her if she would come. It took me a year to get her to come down. And I rented a car, brought her down. She was in her late 70s. So, I made it really easy. I got a big fat ticket because I parked right in front of the building because I didn't want her to walk, Thank goodness they didn't tow the car. And she was lovely. And so that's when she said, well, you will have to do this and this to have this show. And I was willing to do anything. And that was my first really. And then right after that, then I had the Whitney, the Brooklyn Museum. Then museums really started. That's when it just started snowballing. Yeah.
Wow, what a great evolution. And the dead fish and stuff, was that in your home loft? Were you working from home?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. We painted all the walls black, covered the windows with black plastic, and all the neighbors knew about it. It was quite the thing. Adam Gopnik, who's a wonderful writer here in New York, he moved into the building and he wrote about it, and wrote about another guy who was raising rats, pulling them in off the street, and how the rats came up. He let them all go, and they came up the stairs to visit all my dead fish. And oh my goodness, that building.
Wow.
There's lots of things that went on. But yes, that feels like in some ways 100 years ago, but in some ways yesterday,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me about some of your materials. You've worked with very diverse materials. What's maybe the weirdest or the most difficult one you've had to work with?
Well, I love materials. I change them all the time. I would say the hardest one to control was probably the shredded 1950s Airstream trailer that I saw. I saw the trailer had been in an accident, and I'd been shredding cars to be very thin like my hair. And I thought, oh, it'd be so beautiful to shred this 1950s Airstream trailer. It would be so silvery and gorgeous, but it'd be heavy because the trailer's very heavy, And the guy told me it would be like, oh gosh, I don't remember. It was like, I think $50,000, way, way out of my bracket. But I got another sculptor was very wealthy, and I told her she would have to go half with me on this. She wasn't interested at all in doing this, not at all. She said, what did she want to do this for? And I said, oh, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be magnificent. You're going to love this material. And she's like, I don't think so. Oh, yes, yes, yes. We've got to do this. And so I convinced her to go up there and go half with me. I'd gotten a grant from NEA that was worth 25,000. I thought if she could do 25, I could do 25. But the material was very, very heavy. It was very difficult to manage. But I loved that piece a lot. And we used it in a theater piece where kind of a sumo wrestling guy stood underneath it. And then he, on his shoulders, put this beautiful, delicate Japanese dancer, and she would stick her head out and then come back and stick her head out and come back into the hole. So it looked like her head on this big, big legs. And it's in the current show that's traveling around right now that the Chazen Museum organized. So it's a beautiful piece because of the lusciousness of the material. That's probably been one of the most difficult. I would say black sand has been hard too, because that's also very heavy. The heavy materials are hard when you're hanging them.
Yeah.
So you have to work with them a long time before you can master them. Don't you think?
Yeah, of course. I mean, heavy or bulky work is just kind of next level of difficulty, I think.
Yeah. And figuring out how to move them and make sure that they end up exactly as they are when you make them, and making sure that, for generations that they will always look as they look now, I think for me is very important, so yeah.
So you are interested in making your work archival quality and make it last.
Always. Except for the dead fish, which I was into the whole Eva Hesse thing, but I think that I've finished with that phase. I wonder too about Eva Hesse, if she had lived longer, if she would have changed her mind. I don't know, but I talked with Saul LeWitt about it, and I wonder if she would have changed her mind had she seen today what her work looks like, as opposed to what it looked like originally. It was so beautiful when she made it. And it's not as beautiful now. It's looking very, almost sad. And I don't know. I never met her. I didn't know her, but I wonder.
What about things like the wax? It seems very fragile and not long lasting. How do you deal with that?
Oh, I'm so glad you think so. We have 3 patents on it. Do you think
you have actual patents on your wax?
Yes, 3 of them.
Wow.
Yeah. And you probably think it melts like this, right? No. It's 225 degrees before it melts.
Wow.
So it's like this, because I used to work for Chanel. That's when I first came to the city. And the guy who made all the lipsticks is the one who made the formula for the waxes. And I went to him and I said, all my wax is going, and I said, I'm hosing it down in my studio to keep during the summer. And I said, well, what do I do? He goes, let me work on a formula for you. Because I said, it's got to travel, it's got to last. So he made a formula the same as the Egyptian mummies, the shrouds. And he took that basic formula and he made it so that it could be very, very hot. It loves heat. The thing it doesn't like is cold and moving it in the cold. And I put it on very thin layers, which is not, if it was a block of ice is how it comes to me, you can go down to 40 below zero without it cracking. But because I put it on with thin layers, it'll start to crack probably about 20 or 30 degrees. But if you move it in 50 degrees, that it's not gonna be happy. It won't be happy. But the good thing about it is wax is so easily repairable, and there's steel underneath it. So
Right.
maybe the top little things will get messed up, but if you move it properly the way we have it, and each one of those pieces has a special crate, which is made just for it, very expensive. It's like a car, right? Not quite that expensive, but, maybe a used car, and it's all made just for that piece. And then the ones that go to China or Taiwan, it's got 2 crates. So it's got an inner crate and then an outer crate. So
Oh.
it's like a little insulated house, So if you heat it up and then it's kept warm all the way because, it's in the bottom of a plane, which is very cold. And so it just stays nice and toasty till it gets there. And then when it gets there, it's just fine. So we ship a lot and not a drip falls off, so that's how we like to do it. So
Amazing. That's
yeah.
very elaborate. You've had to figure out all this stuff, obviously.
Well, some of them you work 15 years on. I'm not going to work 15 years on a piece and have it just change and be droopy or be cracked or whatever. So absolutely, I'm going to do my darndest to make sure they survive. If people
Hmm.
throw the crates away and then they call up and they go, "Can you send me another crate?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, it's going to be expensive, because they shouldn't throw the crates away
Do
unless
you
they."
make the crates in-house or do you have
No,
like a
no, no, there's a special
specific?
company that makes them. Yeah.
Hmm. Wow. What about building all the works? You mentioned you have assistants now. Tell me, how did you go about finding the right people to help you?
It's hard. It's hard to find them. Mostly, a lot of it has to do I have office assistants, that's where you need your most help, and so
Admin?
yeah. So we have 3 in there, and then everybody's part-time because everybody's an artist except for the registrar. She's the only non-artist. And then we have 3, studio assistants. And
Hmm.
so it works out really good. Sometimes you go through periods where you're trying to find just the right match, but right now we have a really good team once again. And we like to have them stay 15, 17 years. And so they have a lot of history.
Wow, that is a long term.
Yeah. It takes a long time to train them.
Yeah.
And then once they're trained, we really like to have them stay a long time.
Yeah, of course.
So we try to keep them very happy. Sometimes then when they leave, then there's a period where you're trying to find the right matches again. And it's like a little hiccuping. And then all of a sudden you find the right matches again. And you go for another long term. And then you're very close to the people that were there for a long time. You stay very close to them because they were there for a very long time.
And how do you find the assistants? Do you advertise it? Is it word of mouth?
Both. Both. Yeah. It's interesting right now. We have almost all Japanese and African American. It's interesting.
You're still into the Japanese,
Yes.
surrounding yourself with Japanese people.
It's so lovely. They all speak Japanese, because they're all from Japan. And it's like my childhood. I'm so
Yeah.
happy. Yeah, I really love it.
Do you understand some Japanese?
Nope, not at all. Couple
Haven't
words,
looked it
that's
up.
it. And I'm so happy because then you can go on with your own dreaming, and it's just like listening to it. It's lovely. It's so
Mm.
lovely.
If you're an art person with an online presence, listen up. I have something for you that's kind of a must have, and that is a domain name that ends with .art. It's what I use for my own portfolio, and it just makes sense. It feels more professional. and it's more relevant than your usual bog standard .com address. I have a special link that will give you a 15% discount on your own .art domain, and you can even get a matching business email address, which is pretty useful. If you're ready to level up your online presence and get your discount, use my link or the discount code in the show notes. Let's come back a bit to the fragility of the artworks. Not only do they look fragile, but also very tactile and attractive, like something people would really want to touch when they see it in an exhibition. Have you had stuff damaged during an exhibition, and do you do anything building into the work to prevent that?
Well, it seems people are wanting to touch things more and more these days. I don't know what that's about. The Metropolitan's having a terrible time. All the museums are having an awful time of it. Even when they put them on plinths and then they put a rope around it and then they put something else around. I mean, people reach over to touch works of art, and it's horrible. We haven't had, like the show that's at the Chazen right now, I asked to see if we could do it without having anything around. Some of the works are up on plinths, but there was only one piece where someone accidentally, I don't know if they picked it up or if they stepped on it, but they damaged one piece on the floor. And so the thing I got worried about was the piece. And so I asked them to move the flowers out further so that they would, I'd rather have them step on the flowers than to go anywhere near the piece, because the piece is very difficult to repair. So that's what they did. They did that. Knock on wood. We haven't had anything damaged while it's been up that I can think of. We did have at one art fair quite a while ago, somebody took one of the bows on the floor, and my dealer, Mary Zabatino, came over and said, "Petah, I'm so sorry. Someone took one and I feel awful." And I said, "Well, there's nothing, what can you do?" Right? She does her best job. And then about 4 hours later, she came back and she said, "Well, they brought it back and just put it back on the floor."
Wow.
I think what happened was they were checking all the bags and purses at the exits and they couldn't get out with it. So they had to bring it back and put it down again. So I thought that was pretty funny, right?
That is a funny story, yeah.
We did have
Lucky.
I know, right? We did have someone else try to pick one up at a show, and we always for a long time have screwed them into the floor, so that you can't pick them up and
Nothing's really loose.
Nothing's loose. But we never did that. In 2016, we had, I think, 100 of them all over Gallery Lalonde. Not one of them was down. And we had, oh gosh, I don't know how, the opening was so packed. There were people waiting to get in, and there were flowers everywhere. And I thought, oh, there isn't going to be a flower that isn't smashed. There wasn't one flower that was damaged. People just watched where they walked, and not one flower was taken, because underneath we have a number, and it tells what number the piece is and which direction the flower should be turned. Not one thing was, but that was the last year, 2016. Then after that, we had to put everything down.
Interesting trend.
Isn't that interesting that was the end of it? Yeah, but we don't, I'm sure people touch, but we haven't seen much damage. They're tougher than, I don't want to say that, but they're a little stronger than they look. I mean, absolutely, you can break them. Absolutely. But I always think of them as females. They're they're tough underneath. We cry easily, but don't try to cross us, because we're just as strong as you. It's like the velvet hammer.
Love that. Are you always personally present during an installation period, or how does that work?
Always.
Yeah.
So far, I there was one time I did have a heart attack in 2018,
Oh
and
no, sorry to hear
I
that.
yeah, I'm fine. But when I came back, I was not strong or well, and my senior person, I would come in at 10 in the morning and I thought I was like, let's go. And then by 11, I was like, whoa. And my dealer made me go upstairs and lay down. And I would come down with this crease on my face at 3 o'clock, thinking I was just had laid down for a half an hour. I was really not well.
Yeah.
So my head person, Jessica, she did the whole thing. I was there, but I don't know how much I was there. We had it all laid out and planned, but she really did it all.
What
So,
about if a piece gets acquired? What kind of conversations do you have with the collectors or institutions?
well, we always, that happens a lot. The first time when the piece was at the Whitney Museum and a collector said that they wanted to buy a piece. And I said to her, I'll have to come to your house to see. And she was so insulted because she thought I was saying to her, I'll have to come see your collection to see if you can have a piece. But what I was really saying was to see if the piece would fit in your apartment.
Yeah.
And I went there and she was very nervous. And I said to her, "Oh, no, 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 that will never do. I will bring you the piece that you should have." And she was and I didn't learn till later that she was like, "Oh my God," but it was way too big. And she was so sweet and so dear. And she said, "Well, all right." And I'm measuring and I'm doing all this, and she's looking, and I never occurred to me that she would have to approve the piece or like the piece. I assumed that everybody liked everything I did because the New York Times did. So why wouldn't the world? It never occurred to me. And the thing that was so funny was I had no money back then. I'm telling you, no money. And I had this blanket that was a moving blanket. And I think I had two of them. And we wrapped the piece in the moving blanket. And I didn't want to waste her money. So I wrapped the piece in the moving blanket. And Claudia, who was that assistant who used the screwdriver with the hammer, she was still working for me. And so she grabbed one end of it and I grabbed the other. And I said, okay, now we're going to take it in the subway because she's right on the subway line and I am too. I'll just take it up the 4, 5, and 6 line. So we carried this thing. And I could barely carry it. Now, Claudia is very strong. And Claudia really looked like a boy. And she would carry the thing over her shoulder and I would try to carry it behind her. And it looked like a dead body. And remember, this was a time when New York was like, it was
Bit
broke
dodgy.
and people were looking. And then we got out on 86th Street and it was snowing, I remember. And people would stop and look because it did look like a dead body we were carrying. I was like, had it over my shoulder because it had dead fish and everything
Uh-huh.
else all mummified. And it was this big tumor and I was carrying it and she was carrying it. And the police came because they had heard we were carrying this dead body in the thing. And they stopped us on the way up there, with the sirens. And I'm thinking they're going on and they stop. And I'm going, oh my God, Claudia, this is so exciting. Look, the police are here. And I had no idea they were for us. And I was like, oh my. And they said, what are you carrying? I said, oh, sculpture. I'm going to the Dates' house. And he is a very prominent attorney, right? One of the biggest in New York with the biggest law firm and everything. And they said, well, can we see it? And I said, well, I don't know. You'd have to ask them. I don't know. and all that they're thinking it's a dead body. And so he said, "Can't we just look at it?" And I said, "Oh, all right." So I pull over into this Toys R Us place and I'm opening up and they can see that it's this mud sculpture. And they said, "You sure that's a sculpture?" And I said, "Oh yes, I made it." And I said, "I have a show at the Whitney right now." And he says, "Oh, God help us." And he said, "Okay." So he helps and he said, "Do you mind if I walk up there with you?" I said, "Oh, no, not at all." So we walk up there, it's another block, and we get to the front door, and the doorman says I said, "Oh, I'm here to deliver something to the Dateses." And he said, "You'll have to go through the back entrance." I said, "Oh, no, I'm an artist." Thinking like, I don't go through the back entrance. And he goes, "Oh, no, if you're delivering something, you go through the back entrance." I said, "Oh, no, this is a piece of artwork." And he said, "Oh, you'll have to go through the back entrance." I said, "Oh, no, it's art." And I'm not even thinking that, deliveries are in the back because I'm thinking, I'm an artist and this is art. We don't go through the back entrance. We come through the front. My father's a doctor and a general. I come through the front. It never occurred to me. Plus, I have a policeman with me, right? And he looks at the policeman and he goes, "She's an artist, all right. I thought she had a dead body in there." And I turn around and I look at him. I go, "A dead body? What are you talking about?" And so he goes, "I just have to check with Mr. Dates that this is actually an artist." So the guy calls up and he says, "Are you expecting an artist that has a mud sculpture?" And they go, "Oh, yes. And do you want her to go through the front door?" And he said, "Oh, yes, please let her if you don't mind." And he goes, "All right." The policeman is with her and he goes, "The policeman?" And he said, "Yes, he just wants to confirm that this is actually a sculpture." And he goes, "Yes, it's a sculpture." And so the policeman leaves and we go into this elevator. It's red cushioned velvet. And all of a sudden I realize how dirty I am and how dirty my blankets are and how dirty this sculpture is. And this thing is so beautiful with this red and this gold tassels and everything. And the people are coming into the building looking at me, and I'm in this mud covered sweatshirt and dirty boots and I'm filthy. I'm filthy compared to them. And I'm thinking, "Oh, I should have gone in the back. What am I thinking? I'm just filthy." And then we go upstairs and she has this beautiful red lacquered door that I hadn't even noticed before because I was so concerned about the size of the sculpture she'd taken. So we go in and Mr. and Mrs. Dates are there and they're so sweet. And I said, "Oh, if you don't like this piece, I'll bring you another one." And Mr. Dates just looks at us and he looks at his wife thinking, "Why can't you like the Renaissance or Monet or something? But instead you like this." I look like Pigpen. That's what I looked like. And oh God, but bless them. They took that sculpture, they hung it in their living room, and they asked me to come change it every year because that's what I'd been doing. That was part of my whole thing was to change the sculpture
Oh, wow.
to add to it. And they asked me to do that, and that's what I continued to do. And then eventually they donated that piece. That one went to the Whitney. That one went to the
Amazing.
and they made sure Ron and Linda Dates, they made sure that the Whitney Museum had many sculptures by women, which it did not have at that time. And they made sure, I think 10 or 15 women got into the Whitney Museum. They are very, very special people.
Mm. Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah.
Amazing. I'm very intrigued about your practice of changing the works that have already been acquired. That is very unusual.
Isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah.
they allowed me to do that.
How many works did you do that with?
Oh gosh, there were quite a few of them because I thought the idea of continually changing them and making them different and continuing them to grow and change was a really interesting concept. Instead of just having them become stopping in growth, but to continually change them as we change and grow. I thought that was really, but not all collectors allowed me to do that.
Okay, interesting. I
Yeah.
mean, if it was me, I'd be very interested in allowing the artist to continue working on it because that's so unique.
Isn't that? Yeah. But
Mhm.
you're very open and unusual and
True.
yeah,
Weird.
it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing, isn't it?
Yeah. So it sounds like when you started off showing your work, you got into the right shows, into the right institutions quite early on. Like the Whitney. How on earth did you get in there?
There was a curator who was doing a show on the 5 elements, and I, of course, was earth because I was using all the earth things, mud, I was using roots, I was going down to the swamps and digging them up, drying them out, and then putting them in crates and sending them north and debugging them when I did that. So they gave each person a room. Ann Hamilton was, I can't remember what she was, but there were 5 elements. And so everybody had a room. And it was a beautiful show, beautiful show. Little tiny catalog. It was really lovely. And the Brooklyn Museum, we did a big installation in the entrance. That was a big one for me. And I supported a lot of this by getting grants.
Mhm.
Um, and I'd been applying for them for 10 years before I got my
Yeah.
first one.
Wow.
10 years. I just kept applying and applying. I used to pretend that if I didn't apply, I would get thrown out of the art world. That's how I made my mind. Okay, just keep applying or someone will throw you out of the art world. And that's how I
I
made,
guess that's a good motivator to keep doing it because it is so deflating when you keep applying and you don't get anything.
you don't get it. I know, right? It
Yeah.
was like horrible.
Mm.
And and then all of a sudden, you get one, and then you get a second one, and then a third one, and then you get everything because everybody wants to make sure, "Oh, yes, we supported her too. We supported her too." And
Right.
that's how, and someone told me that, and I didn't believe them, but it's true. It's true. So
Interesting.
you have to apply every year consistently. Just keep applying. And
Mhm.
then pretty soon they say, where have I seen this work before? Well, every year we keep applying. So it was good. It was good that way. I just had a drawer and every month I would pull out what it was I was supposed to apply for that year. And it was harder then because now everybody has the internet and you can easily pull it up. But then you had to go to the library to do the research and right away for the applications. It was much
Very
harder,
time consuming.
very time consuming.
Mm. So, which would you say is more difficult to deal with? The time where nothing's going on and you're like, "Oh, I'll never get another show again," or the time where everything's happening at once and everyone wants a piece of you and you're like, "Oh, no, I have to say no to things."
I think when you're beginning, because you feel the insecurity of not being sure your work is any good. That's a very hard time. That's a very hard time. My brother used to say, you will look back and be happy that you had that private time in your studio. And maybe that's true, but I remember thinking, am I any good? Is my work of any value? Why am I doing this? And I questioned myself a lot. And you see a lot of other people getting things and you're not getting anything. And you wonder, am I wasting my life? Should I be in another field even?
Yep.
But your heart tells you you had to do a lot of soul searching. My heart told me, well, even if nobody ever likes my work, I know this is what I'm supposed to do. But it does take a lot of nerve to say that when you're spending every bit of your money and your energy on it. You almost feel foolish. I used to have a little book I would mark down, okay, I spent 50 cents on this, I spent $1 on this, and all my friends say, "Oh, come on, we're going out to this great French restaurant." And I'd say, "Oh, no, I'm not really hungry." I was
Mm,
so dying to go. And I'd say, "No, no," and I missed a lot of great things, but I would just say, just keep going, just go one more year, and then just one more year, and then just one more year." And I remember I did that. And I tell you this because I know it's very hard, and I want other people to realize that you're not alone out there, that it is very hard. And I think it's even harder now because there's even more artists, from what I understand. There's so many people graduating with art degrees. And that's why I said your art is unique. And that's hard to find something where you're unique in. And I think people make fun of you, and that's really difficult when they do that. And then you begin to question, well, is my work any good? And I think the thing that really helped me was I said, okay, I'm going to put a group of us together because I'm not getting, people come over and look and then they just look and they don't give me any feedback. Like that one guy who was so great said, you should do this. So
mm,
then I put a group of 12 of us. I didn't do it. Someone else did it. I was lucky enough to get into it, but we would go once a month to each of our studios. And the deal was that we had to be perfectly honest. Like when you walk into a show and you can see in that show exactly you think what that artist should do. Like, oh, they should not have used that green. Or if they only had
mm,
outlined and continued to outline the edges of every, like Giotto, gone around the edges. Oh, that would have been so perfect. Or, whatever. And we promised that we would say out loud what we thought, not meanly, but
mm.
to be honest and to help the person, right? And we would end up once a year in everybody's studio. And I was the youngest and most inexperienced of this group. They all had one or two or three shows, and they were much older. And I thought, oh gosh, this is going to be so hard. And they'd all been to graduate school and I had not. And so we all went around, and boy, when they came to my studio, oh man, it was so hard. I remember vomiting after they left. And it was hard. It was hard, but they gave really good feedback. And I think that was even harder than when that curator came, when Susan came, because Susan was just like, you're just not ready. They were like, well, look, this is what I think. You're not being playful enough. This is this, this is this. And it was good feedback. And in fact, there's one guy that's still, I can really trust all those people. So if I'm struggling and I don't know what to do with my work, I'll call him up and I'll say, please come over and look at my work.
That
And
is so great.
it's
It's
really a great
really
thing to have.
valuable. Yeah.
Because sometimes you don't know. Who do you trust? Who do you trust? You've worked so hard. And one show I did, I worked really hard and I think I knew that it wasn't ready. And I called him, I said, please come over. And he looked for about an hour and then he started to comment. And I said, so it's not ready for this show that I've got coming up in 2 months. He said, I wouldn't show it. I said, that's all I needed to hear. I must have done. So I called the dealer and I said, I've got to have more time. And they said, the cards are already printed. I said, I'm
Oh,
so sorry,
yeah.
but
But
that
even
was,
just having that conversation with the dealer must have been so difficult.
yes, that was bad. These things are so hard because you think, well, maybe I should just do it. And you think, oh, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Because then the work's out there. and the work can be sold. Once the work's sold, it's not yours anymore. Even though you always feel it's yours, it's not yours anymore. It's
Yeah.
gone. It's really tough. Yeah.
I really admire your dedication to ensuring that only the best leaves your studio and sees the world.
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
What about you?
Me, well, I'm not like that. I think because I'm still kind of in the early days of my career, I guess, and I get some invitation that's maybe not like super exciting or ideal venue or, opportunity. But hey, they want to show my work and they want to pay me for it, which is also, rare these days. So I'm like, well, I'll just treat it as an opportunity to practice this different element of my work. It's not going to be a perfect environment. It's not going to be the perfect work, but I'll learn something from it,
Mm, That's a good
That's
way
how
to.
that's how I approach it. If I had like 10 things coming in, then I could say, oh, well, no to this and no to that. But
Mhm.
otherwise, yeah.
And everybody's career and lookout on the world is different.
Mhm.
And so that's a really good way to look at it. You don't have like 15 things coming in and things of that nature. So you just have to do with what you're doing, right? So that's good. And you have to figure it out for your mind and what you feel is right. And what's right for me and what's right for you can be two entirely different things. And where you are in the world and where I am in the world are two entirely different things. And if you come to New York and you're here and doing something here, it will be different for you than it is there in Australia. So,
Yeah, for sure.
it'll just be a different thing. So, I was looking at your work and I was thinking, you doing something at the drawing center here in New York, that would be a
Mm,
perfect thing for your installation because it's
I
all about
know.
drawing and the installation. That would be so wonderful. Have you ever applied for that
No, I didn't know you could apply for something there.
at the
I haven't
drawing
looked at
center?
it for a while.
Oh, yes. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, they
Okay.
do a lot of curated shows, but I think so. They used to all the time. Yes,
I'll
absolutely.
look into it.
Yes, yes, because they used to review portfolios. That would be really nice.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. Like galleries, for example, they don't like that anymore. They don't like people sending them stuff and cold calling them and approaching them. You kind of have to get your way in through some back doors nowadays, through
Mm,
connections.
I know, that's really true. It's really true. They don't even like other people calling them. Like, I tried to call some dealers for some artists that I knew. Oh my god, you'd think I'd ask them to stand in the middle of a street when buses were coming. I mean, it was like, Lord have mercy. I was like, "I know this artist you will really like." "No, I don't wanna look at any more work, Peter." I'm like, "Okay, okay." I said, "How
Wow.
about if I bring it over, just like one piece or just an image?" And they were like, "No, Peter, we've got so many artists." I'm like, "Alright, okay, I got you." But
That's
it's
a
kind of
shame.
sad. It's sad, but I understand they must be overwhelmed at a certain point, but, hmm.
Well, good for you for trying to advocate for other artists at least.
Oh my goodness, yes. I mean, I remember how difficult it was and how hard it was. And it's always hard to get your foot in the door. It's
Mm.
it's always hard, I think. It seems the best way is they do go around and look at shows, group shows, and it seems, if I were doing it now, if I found a dealer that I really liked, there's so many empty spaces here in New York. I would go to a space that was near their gallery and do a show with a group of my friends really close to their gallery, like 2 doors down or something like that. And I would be open an hour before their gallery open and an hour after with lights on, bright lights, so that they would see it because they do like looking at art.
Yeah.
And so that's what I would do. So at least they would see your work and it'd see it firsthand, and that's what I would do.
That is
I
a
mean,
great tip.
yeah. I mean, I would try, think of unusual things and sometimes it's so weird because the dealers that you think will be perfect for you are often not the dealers for you, which is interesting. But you could,
How do you figure it out? Is it about having conversations with people or?
yes, sometimes, or sometimes you're in some shows. I mean, the dealer I have now, I met because I had to heat up my wax and she had a plug in her booth at an art fair. And that's how I got to know her originally. So it's weird, but I always loved that gallery. But I think I don't really know. I was such a haunter of galleries. I would go around and and eventually they see you because it's not at openings where it's the crush, they see you every week in their gallery. So they become familiar with you and occasionally they speak to you. And if you're there every single week, they often think you're a collector or something, so,
Mhm.
so that's one way.
Yeah.
And
What's a hard truth you've had to learn as an artist?
a hard truth. Oh gosh. Oh, well, that maybe everyone isn't as honest as I had thought. That was probably the hardest truth I had to learn. And
That's a pretty hard one.
yeah.
Did you get swindled?
I think every artist gets swindled a little bit. Yes.
Do you want to share some details?
I can't.
Okay. What about on the positive side? Is there a particularly rewarding or transformative experience that you've had as an artist?
Oh gosh, there's so many. I would say on the whole, the art world and the artist, and I would say writers. Oh, writers are so wonderful because their minds are so terrific. And curators, directors are and dealers are so generous. They really go the 9 yards. They really do. And collectors, I mean, gosh, if you knew how much work that collectors have purchased, and so few of it has ended up at Sotheby's or Christie's, maybe 2 pieces, maybe 3, and those were damaged. That's why they ended up there. All the rest, the collectors called and asked, "Where would you like us to donate this?" So almost all of it ends up in museums, which is so nice. And that's where you want your work to be in the public eye.
Yeah,
It's
of
so
course.
nice. Or they buy it for a museum starting out, that is like super, super generous. And I don't think anybody's ever flipped my work, which I think would be so funny. It's not the flipping kind of work. And I will say that most people in the art world are here because they want to be in the art world, and they're very kind and very generous. And I will say, on the whole, women are super kind and really thoughtful. And especially when I first joined in meeting people in the art world, especially in the beginning, because at the beginning, women were nowhere and nobody was showing sculpture. And so women were so generous because there was nothing to lose, nothing to gain. There was nothing. And so women were just, it was a very special time. It's when exhibitions and sales and stuff started to get involved there that it got maybe a little messier. But I would say on the whole that most people are very, very thoughtful and very considerate. And that's always, gosh, people are really kind that way. And I've always been overwhelmed by people's thoughtfulness in the art world.
That's nice to hear.
Yeah.
Have you found it's been a bit of an uphill battle as a woman sculptor?
I would say a male sculptor said to me, he had half the awards, half the shows. His resume is like 5 pages long. He's my age, and mine is like 35 pages long. And his sculpture's much more expensive than mine. And I think that's pretty typical. And he said this, and I think that's probably true. I don't know why that is. A number of years ago, the Guerrilla Girls did a poster where it said, you could buy 10 of these artists for one of this male artist, And I think I don't know why that is. It's a good deal for someone who wants to invest in work, for long term. So, your profit is a lot less. And sometimes I lose money. Well, often I lose money on the work that I make, but I'm not in this to make money. You don't go into sculpture to make money. Maybe you make money as a painter, but sculptors don't make much money.
So do you sometimes self-fund your projects?
Sometimes I do. I'll start making things, but usually the money has come from pieces that I've already made. There are occasions where I lose money on pieces that I sell, and that kills me. But I don't keep records of, it cost me this much, because I wouldn't do that. That would be just too horrifying. But like the tree that I just finished building, that took us 10 years to build, I think it was. And so I just don't want to know what that cost was.
If you're taking a really long time to make something and then you start thinking of the labor hours, then it's like, no, don't even go there.
Don't go there. Oh gosh, it just like, and all the people. Yeah, so, but I would say that, we don't make anything fast here, unfortunately. Yeah. And it's the labor that's so expensive. So, yeah. And I'm so lucky that I'm able to make work. That's how I look at it. I'm so fortunate that I'm able to make work, and that I've been able to continue to make work, and that I have the space to make work, and that I have the materials to make work. That's the only way I'm going to look at it. And that thrills me.
Yeah. Is there an unrealized dream project inside you that you haven't been able to make yet?
Well, I always think the project I'm working on right now, the one I'm working on, is my dream project, because anything I want to make, I make sure I make. I haven't been able to do much public art, and I would like to do that. But I feel like it's kind of like I had to decide, do I want to do photography or do I want to do sculpture? Because I felt like I couldn't do both excellently. So I chose sculpture. And I do a little photography because I love photography, but sculpture is my main drive. And then it's kind of like, do I do sculpture indoors or do I do sculpture outdoors? Because I feel also you can't do both really well. So I feel like maybe I'll do a little bit outdoors, but mostly indoors. Because maybe other people can. In fact, I know other people can, but I'm so slow. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a slow person, but I'm just so slow. Are you fast?
Yeah, I don't have much patience. I need my process is pretty slow because it's like, first you have to do this, and then you have to paint, and then you have to wait for the paint to dry. Then, like painting and prepping takes so much time, and that's not the part of it that I like. So I'm doing it to get to the part that I like, which is drawing on it. But yeah, I'm trying to be faster and like streamline and learn about what materials are the best and, always improving. Yeah, I don't like being slow. But I think like all art is inevitably, you have to take your time. It's
Yes.
kind of like this meditative, pick your torture kind of process. Like you look at someone else's work and you're like, oh, I could never do that. You have so much patience. But then they look at my work and they're like, you have so much patience.
That's so clever.
It is kind of like that. You pick your version of it.
Pick your torture.
Yeah.
Oh.
Mm. So what are you currently working on? What's going on for you?
Oh, we have 5 exhibitions out right now.
Wow.
And I know, right? And 3 of them are traveling for 3 or 4 years. And so we have to keep going and putting them up and taking them down. And 2 are just up and down. And then there's a couple after that. But I'm now working on a new body of work and I'm trying some new things. I'm not sure if they'll work, but I'm very excited about it. I wanna try it. So, it's risky, not sure. Like this one show I was just in, I tried something new. Ooh, it failed miserably. I
Mhm.
had to scrape it all off the floor. It was like first and I was leaving the next day for another show, and I was like, "Oh, Lord have mercy." And they were very nice. The assistants there had to heat it up and scrape it. Oh god, it was a mess. I made a mess. And I said, "I am so sorry." And he looked at me and he said, "Bless you for even at your age still being experimental." It was horrible. It was horrible, horrible. But I wanted to really try this thing, but it just did not work. It did not work. It didn't work. I didn't have enough time and I didn't plan it out well enough, but it really was a bomb and it was horrible. So there you go. You try it and sometimes you lose, and I lose bad. And so I had to send up some other things to kind of they
Make
scraped
up
it up,
for it.
heated it up, and something else worked. It was mediocre, but anyway, that happens.
Weren't you getting into experimenting with video at some point?
I was, and it doesn't look good.
Ah,
Doesn't look good. Mm-mm, mm-mm. I'm trying. Yeah. And then I thought, God, if I gotta do this, I really have to focus on it. And then I thought, okay, I'm 71. Do I do this or do I just do sculpture? Oh God. And then I keep hearing all these people dying 77, 78, 79. I thought, I
eh.
better stick with this. But I've always thought I'll live to both my parents lived to be 100. So I'm like thinking, okay, could I live to be 110? Because you always try to outlive your parents. And I thought, okay, if it's 110, then I've got 80, 90, 100. I've got 40 years left. I could do the video. This is me like going, okay, da, da, da. And I thought, okay, no, just don't hedge your bets. Just stick with the sculpture. So I would love to do the video. I love video. I love video art. I really do love video art, but I'm not sure I have enough time. This frustrates me. I have so many ideas. So many ideas. I bet you're the same way, right?
Yeah, I wanna try so many mediums, but I'm like, "Oh, no, but I don't wanna learn this from scratch," you know?
It's really hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I
really
mean, I had Sandy Skoglund on the show a while back, and I so admire her tenacity and ability to be like, "I'll just go and learn this brand new skill." Like, "What?"
Isn't she wild? She
Yeah,
is wonderful. She's such
yeah.
a great friend. She is like, "Oh, I'll just go learn how to make cats." I'm like, "Okay." So I'll go learn how to make pottery. Okay, now I'll go take a sewing class and learn that. Yeah, and she just goes and takes these classes that are very extensive and 3 weeks long, and she is wild, isn't
Yeah.
she?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I really admire her for all the things that she does. She is so underrated, so underrated. What's the issue there, right? So
yeah, no,
underrated. What's
her
the
work is amazing.
amazing? Like, is she known really well in Australia?
I don't think so.
What's
I
the
don't think
problem
so.
here? I
I
think
mean,
she's
her work is more famous than her name, I think. The images.
yes.
So
When you say
people would,
radio cats, everyone knows those.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I
I
think
think
so.
she's more well known in Europe than even in the United States.
Mm. Have you ever combined the sculpture and photography in that way, like taking photos of your work and using that as a different type of work?
The only thing I've done is when Irene Holtman and I did the chandelier pieces where we did that collaboration, and I took photographs of that, and then I blew those up.
Because your work is very photogenic and it's also very videogenic because it's so 3D, like the way your mom would turn the vase. Like you could just go around it and
And move it. I'll have to think about that. Thank you. I'll have to think about that. Yeah, Irene Holtman was is such a beautiful dancer. She's a great choreographer. Yeah.
what's your top tip for an artist who's just starting to play around with large scale sculpture and installation?
Oh my gosh. Become a painter.
I mean, it's shocking how many of my guests say something along those lines.
Don't you
Yeah.
think?
Mm, yeah. Get into miniatures or do painting, or are you sure you want to do this? Yeah, that's kind of the gist of it.
Oh God. If I had a talent, I'd be a painter. You know that. Oh, this is too hard.
It is hard. I can't believe you're saying that.
Oh, totally, totally hard. Yeah.
Yeah. What's your biggest challenge right now?
Time. Time. If I knew I had 40 years, then I would sleep a little bit more. But you know, you just don't know, right?
Yeah.
So you just move.
I guess you kind of have to live like you don't have 40 years. I think.
Always.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to pretend you have very little time.
Mm. Yeah, I always have that sense of urgency. I don't know what it is. My therapist thinks it's just anxiety, but I'm like, no, no, I feel like I'm running out of time all the time. I'm late. I need to like speed things up, you know?
I always felt that way ever since I was like 10 or 11. Maybe many artists feel that way because you
I
have so
wonder.
much to accomplish.
Yeah. And everything takes a
So
long time.
long.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, tell your therapist it's a sculpture thing.
It's an artist thing. Yeah.
And maybe I wonder if painters feel that too. Maybe they do, but I wonder if it's even more with sculptors.
Mm. I wonder. Our listeners should write in and let me know.
Yes, let us know,
Tell us.
please.
Mm-hmm. I'll report back if I hear anything.
Please do. Please do.
Well, Peter, I could keep talking because you are so interesting and you're such a great storyteller, but it's getting late there. Tell me, where can people see your work, find out more about you, maybe buy your work?
Well, I think our Instagram, which we've been terrible about updating, our Instagram or our website, and our gallery handles all the sales. We don't deal with that. Gallery Lalonde in New York
Yeah.
is all that for us. Yes. So
Okay.
it's been so lovely speaking with you. And I
Yes.
hope I get to see your work in person very, very soon.
Me
And
too.
yes, and I hope that everything goes very well for you.
Thanks so much, Petah. It's been so great.
It's been lovely speaking with you. Thank you for being interested in my work. I'm honored, really honored. Thank you.
Wow, what a wonderful conversation. I hope you enjoyed this. This was Petah Coyne, based in New York. You can find out more about her work on her website, petahcoyne.org. That's PETAHCOYNE.org, and follow her on Instagram at Petah Coyne. She is represented by Gallery Lalonde & Co. in New York and Nunu Fine Art in Taiwan. Links to those, as well as everyone mentioned in this episode, are in the show notes and on our website, installationartpodcast.com. If you've found value in the Installation Art Podcast and want to support the show, there's a simple way to help. Just visit our website and click the Tips button to make a donation. Your support not only helps cover production costs, but also allows me to create more high-quality content and invite higher-profile guests to release regular, engaging episodes and keep growing this show. Thank you for tuning in, and until next time.